Welcome to the Transformative Pursuit with Dr. Christopher Cohn. We're glad you have joined us and pray the content will be helpful and encouraging. The pursuit starts now.
And welcome to the Transformative Pursuit. This is episode 18, A Biblical Approach to Engaging Politics, Part 3. We finish our series. We could go on and on and on with this series. There's so much to say, but trying to keep it a little bit abbreviated and manageable. So this is part 3, the final of this installment. Anyways, we discuss engaging political things through a biblical lens. And today's Transformative Pursuit is brought to you by Versity TV, versitytv.com. Enjoy free access to new episodes, classes, and other biblical content from a solid lineup of organizations and educators, or gain full access to all video content for $9 monthly subscription or $216 for a lifetime subscription. Versity TV. We're glad that the Transformative Pursuit is on Versity TV, as well as Grace Gospel Radio. Engaging Politics, a Biblical Approach, Part 3. That's where we are today. And remember, we started our discussion thinking about 3 goals that we had in this brief series. We want to, first of all, identify biblical norms or ideals for political speech and action. What should it look like? What's it designed to look like? And what's our designed response? It's kind of a give and take, and there are ideals and a system in place that is to be upheld. So we've identified that. We've worked through a number of passages. We'll do a quick review of those. Secondly, we want to respond to failure, disunity, and division. That's the tough part because these ideals aren't often held up in experience. Every country is dealing with this kind of thing because every country is dealing with human beings, and you and I, as human beings, are pretty broken and focused on the wrong things. So how do we respond to failure, disunity, and division? And then the third goal we had is to express grace in our political interaction. Sometimes we need to be firm and fierce and take very strong action, but we can always do that in grace and in love. And we'll see what that might look like and some examples of that in the Bible. So first we focused on identifying biblical norms. We saw Jesus and his example in Matthew 6, 17, and 22. We saw Paul providing us guidance on how believers ought to be interacting with government and others in Romans 12 and 13. We saw how Paul explained there's this incredible unity, and we need to walk in this calling, this unity we've been called to, and what that looks like in practice in Ephesians 4, 1 through 7. Paul provides information and guidance to Timothy and Titus for dealing with authority, specifically in 1 Timothy 2, 1 through 4, and Titus 3, 1 through 11. And then we saw Hebrews 12:14, the general statement about dealing with everyone, focused on peace and holiness. And then 1 Peter 2:13 through 20, which included the statement that we need to honor all humanity and honor the king, those in authority. So those are some of the biblical norms. Those are some of the foundational ideals and principles laid out in Scripture. Well, what happens when it gets broken? So many times in Scripture we'll see the design presented, and there's not a specific recipe for when it breaks. There's a lot in life that's broken, and so we have to use wisdom that God provides, biblical discernment, critical thinking, rooted in Scripture. And a lot of that will actually come from viewing examples of godly and righteous people who've had to deal with some of the same types of situations. So let's think about that for a few minutes, responding to failure, disunity, and division. Now, we're going to think about some broad contexts, and I'm going to encourage you, because these are longer contexts of Scripture, I'm going to encourage you to read these in your own time and think about each one. First of all, we see Exodus 1. We often refer to them as the Hebrew midwives, but it's specifically Shiphrah and Puah. And Pharaoh had put out an edict that all Hebrew males should be killed at birth. Quite a birth control situation there. And Shiphrah and Puah deceive Pharaoh, and they do not kill the Hebrew males. So God protects his promise with Israel and uses people like Shiphrah and Puah. Now, Shiphrah and Puah deceived Pharaoh. And you might measure, well, they lied, but it was to prevent murder, and they lied to someone who was an evil, murderous person. Well, there's lots of ethical discussions you can have about that. It's a great case study. I'm certainly not advocating deception or lying, but in this case, Shiphrah and Puah were blessed as they protected Hebrew children, Hebrew males, from being killed. They are responding to failure, disunity, and division. They were responding to a very evil government who was not fulfilling what they were supposed to fulfill. They deceived that Pharaoh and protected life. I'm not going to provide any specific applications. I'll let you think through those yourself. I only present this to remind us that sometimes things are broken and you have to deal with it. And in this case, God bless Shiphrah and Puah. Daniel chapter 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Of course, we're very familiar with them. They're told to bow down to this great statue of Nebuchadnezzar, and they refuse to do that. They're thrown into a fiery furnace, and God himself, we see the pre-incarnate Jesus comes and is with them, delivers them from the fire. Well, they were told, all they had to do is bow down to this image. And they refused to do that. And what we notice there in that section is that they did violate the law and they accepted the consequences. They said, we believe God can deliver us, but even if he does not deliver us, we will not bow. So they commit the crime and they are willing to take the consequence. And as they are in the consequence, God himself delivers them. So that's an interesting component there, that they're willing to die. They're willing to violate this edict, this law of Nebuchadnezzar, and they suffer that penalty willingly. Then we get Daniel chapter 6. Daniel prays constantly. He opens his window, faces east as he prays, so he's visible from the outside. His political enemies hate him, want to destroy him, and they realize they're not going to find him involved in any corruption or unrighteousness. So the only way that they're going to be able to trap him is with respect to his worship of God and his faithfulness to God. So they get the king to provide an edict and a law that you can only pray to the king. Well, that doesn't work for Daniel, of course. He continues, and the text tells us just as before. He doesn't change anything. He doesn't go behind closed doors. He keeps doing exactly what he's doing. That's a part of how he's worshiping God and expressing his relationship with God. And these people see that, and they bring the news to the king, who is sorrowful when he learns of this because he thinks very highly of Daniel. Well, Daniel is thrown into a den of lions, and of course that's the end of Daniel, right? Except that it isn't, because God protected Daniel also from those consequences. So Daniel also was willing to undergo the consequences, but unwilling to violate his commitment to worshiping the Lord. So awesome examples, but notice in each of these cases, Exodus 1, Daniel 3, Daniel 6, these people are taking their lives into their own hands, and they are okay with the consequences. They would rather be faithful to God. Well, speaking of faithfulness to God, we see in Acts chapter 1, and then in chapters 4 and 5, the apostles being commissioned and given direct guidance from Christ himself to proclaim his good news. And then in chapters 4 and 5 of Acts, they're doing just that. And they're arrested and imprisoned, and when they're released, they're told, do not preach Jesus Christ anymore. And of course, Peter famously says, we will obey God rather than men. Once again, they're willing to accept the consequences. They peaceably accept the consequences. And this happens throughout their ministry. But they are going to obey Jesus Christ. Now, something we note in this passage is they are obeying a direct command he gave them that's recorded in Scripture. And so something to consider is when we're looking at responding to failure, disunity, and division, and that involves a conscientious objecting, let's call it, we better be certain that it's something that God has presented. And not just a personal preference. The apostles were doing this based on the word of Jesus Christ, not based on their own ideas and ideals. 1 Corinthians 1 through 4 provides us an explanation of the root of disunity that can happen in a group of people, specifically the body of Christ that was in Corinth. They were filled with pride, and that pride caused disunity. So often, when we elevate ourselves and we are trying to even protect ourselves, we get focused on ourselves, which is a form of pride, and it's at the expense of someone else. We want to be careful with that. The root of disunity is very much and often pride. Ephesians 4 reminds us of the root of unity. The basis for the unity we have is this calling that God has provided, this grace by belief in Jesus Christ, and we're one in that body. Well, we're also supposed to be doing good to those outside of that body. But that's the basis of unity, not our own personal expressions of self or our rights. We have rights, of course, but sometimes those are worth giving up. And then, of course, Philippians 2, we see the standard, that is Jesus Christ and his example in pouring himself out. So a lot to think about as we respond to failed government, failed leadership. There's a time for action, and when we go into extra biblical stuff, we think about the Declaration of Independence, which puts on the citizens of the United States the responsibility when government has become tyrannical and violated the rights, the God-given rights that are inalienable, meaning they cannot be separated, namely life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When government infringes on those things, the Declaration of Independence calls on people to replace the government. Well, that's the Declaration of Independence. We want to be careful. That's not the Bible. So citizens of the United States are called to take this approach. Government is supposed to be for the people and serving the people. But there's a lot to consider there. And we see these biblical examples that provide us guidance and case studies of people who had to deal with government that was evil rather than good. Well, how do we express grace in political engagement? This is our third goal here in this brief series. And I would say from the passages we've looked at, there are 6 principles we can apply to express grace in our political engagement. We should be involved. We should be engaged, right? We are citizens. We're supposed to fulfill every stewardship we have, and God has given us this incredible gift. What's it look like? Principle 1, biblical focus and discernment. Biblical focus and discernment. Make sure our priority is on our walk with the Lord. Make sure our priority is on being informed by Scripture, guided by Scripture, walking in the Spirit, filled with the Spirit, by allowing His Word to control us. Biblical focus and discernment. Principle number 2, humility and selflessness. Always placing the other, considering the other as worthy of more honor than ourselves, whether they're in authority or not. Humility and selflessness as Christ modeled in Philippians chapter 2. Principle number 3 is respect. Respecting all, as Peter described in 1 Peter chapter 2, treating all with honor and all with respect, no matter who they are, no matter how they're different, no matter what the quality of their lifestyle is, respect for all as people created in the image of God. Principle number 4, universal subjection. As Paul explains in Ephesians 5:21, be subject to one another in the fear of Christ. We're to consider ourselves as worthy of less honor and treat others as worthy of more. Principle number 5, edifying speech. Our speech should always be a blessing, should always be an encouragement, should always build up. If not, it's the wrong kind of speech. And then principle number 6, prayerfulness. Always be prayerful for others. So these are 6 principles that will help us express grace in political engagement. We have accomplished our 3 goals of identifying biblical norms, biblical ideals, responding to the failures when those norms and ideals aren't upheld, and expressing grace in our political interaction. So there we go, Engaging Politics, a Biblical Approach, Part 3. Enjoy your study as you examine these passages and dig deeper. We will see you next time on The Transformative Pursuit.